Alright, today I'm going to show you how to replace a belt on a Polaris Magnum 330. Now, majority of the Polaris models are going to be exactly like this. Covers may look slightly different, a little different sticker, footwells may look a little different, but for the most part, this is going to be exactly how you do any of the 90s Polaris four-wheelers or the early 2000s. This happens to come off of a 2005 Magnum 330. First thing you're going to want to do, there'll be 4 bolts holding this footwell down, and in this one they were a Torx head, a 27T Torx, and then they've got a nut down below there, and that's typically an 11 millimeter, and I used a wrench and I used an impact to pull these screws all the way out. Once you get those all the way out, you're going to have enough area to move here to be able to get this cover off, replace the belt. You don't actually have to completely disassemble this footwell. You will want to pull this panel right here. We've already done that, as you can see. Obviously the seat will have to be removed to do that step. This duct right here, sometimes it does help to pull this this boot here. There is generally a rubber boot that fits on here. There needs to be. If there's not, that kind of protects any debris from going down in there. Sometimes I'll show you how to get this off there, but I'll pull it. You can pull it back, and a lot of times you can pull it out of this actual plastic tube here, this vent. So if you got this cover off, the left-hand cover, you pulled the 4 screws for the footwell off. That is all you're going to have to do body-wise. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is a 3/8 socket is what you're going to use to remove all the screws. All the screws around this clutch cover look like this. They look like a typical screw. Takes a 3/8 socket, and I like to put a swivel on there because underneath here with this footwell still on, you're going to have to do something that looks like that. And you can get to it if you use a long extension. Sometimes you can hold your impact out here. You don't have to have an impact driver to do it. This is what I'm talking about, an impact driver. But it does make it a lot easier, a lot quicker to do that. There's 9 of those screws. I left 2 of them on just to kind of show you how I do it here. And if you've got a swivel on it, you just kind of put that wherever it needs to go and then spin it out. Especially if you have a swivel, be careful because it has a tendency to do that if you get it spinning really fast without control. I left one on in the back here. And that is going to be it for this cover. Like I said, there's 9 screws. We left 2 of them in just for demonstration. Now you're going to have to pull this cover off, or this footwell back a little bit, and then you're going to be able to slide this cover off. Now this duct here, we've removed that screw for another video, and so it's going to wiggle around there a little bit, but if you pull this cover back far enough, then a lot of times you can get it off of that tube right there and not have any issue. Now you kind of just got to finagle it around a little bit to pull it off of here. You're not going to break anything by pulling this out. You can typically pull it out a good 6-8 inches without doing any kind of damage. Now we've got the cover off here. It's completely off. That clutch and the belt are exposed. Now we've got our primary clutch here. This is our secondary clutch. To pull the primary clutch off, if you've got grooves that are on these sheaves, you want to replace it. If they're bad, you've got weights in here and you've got buttons in here. And on a separate video, I'll show you how to disassemble this clutch and rebuild the actual clutch. This time I'm just showing you how to replace the belt and remove the clutches if we need to. So now this belt, most of the time you can take, and I like to just spin it backwards, and I take the belt, pull it up here. Generally, if you're replacing it, it's obviously bad. You're not going to be able to just pull it off of there unless there's a broken area. That's not going to work. So you can pull it off the top here, and then I just spin it, and I'll just keep on spinning it off. And you'll spin it off just like that. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put this belt back on because we're not actually replacing this belt on this machine. So I'm going to take new belt, make sure if it's directional, make sure it's going the correct way, and you take it, put it on the primary sheave to start, slide it, make sure it's all the way down in the groove, and then start it on the secondary sheave. Or the secondary clutch, put it in as far as it can go up there, and then you just take and spin that. It'll start doing this number on the bottom here, and that's okay, but I do like to take and push it down a little bit just to kind of keep it a little bit straighter. And then if you keep on turning this secondary clutch here, it'll kind of wedge itself down into these, in between these sheaves here, and you can spin it all the way on. Now this belt is loose. This one will need replaced, but we're not doing it at this time. To remove these sheaves now, you can, to remove the clutches, another way to replace the belt is to actually take these clutches off. And I like to take them off to inspect them. I blow through them with compressed air to clean them out, check buttons. It takes a 16mm socket, and an impact is generally a lot easier because you're able to spin it without having to hang on to anything. But you can use a wrench or a socket and spin it off. You just want to make sure you're hanging on to it. Sometimes that can be a challenge. Now this bolt here, make sure this washer gets put back where it needs to go, otherwise you'll have some serious wobble on this clutch here, and you'll end up destroying more than just your belt. So you've got a plastic washer there, a plastic spacer there, you've got a larger washer, and then you've got a smaller washer here. Now to remove your back bolt, it takes a 13mm socket, and it is same way, just a regular threaded bolt, so you just remove it the same way you typically would. You've got a washer, and this is a special washer. This also centers this clutch, keeps that from wobbling. So you want to make sure that that cupped area is on the inside. Then you've got another lock washer there. So that is your back clutch. Your back clutch you can just pull off. That's all there is to that. And if your belt is still on, it'll look like that. And then a lot of times what I like to do is just take your clutch off just like that. Now this clutch is off. And to remove your primary clutch, you actually have to have a special tool for it. So, and let me know if you need that tool. I've got it for sale. Spin it. This is what the clutch looks, or the puller looks like here. It's threaded right here. It's got a long shaft that's going to go all the way down there. It's actually going to press against the crankshaft. So spin that in. This one takes a 23mm. And now you take and just thread that in. Thread that in until it stops. And then keep on going, and it's actually going to push that clutch off of the crankshaft. So if it doesn't come off right away, a lot of times what I'll do is leave my socket on there. I'll take a hammer and I'll just tap it one time, and a lot of times that'll give it enough force to push that clutch right off of that crankshaft. Now that clutch is off. That's what it looks like there, in really good shape. Now these buttons, you want to make sure that those are in good shape. Make sure it doesn't have a lot of wiggle back and forth right here. Make sure there's no wiggle. And then these weights, if you need to replace them again, I'll show you those videos, but the weights are right there, and there is 3 of those weights on this one. So going back together then, you don't need any special tools. In fact, we need to take this one all the way out. Take that one out. I like to use thread lock on this. After thread lock is applied, run it in there, take and tighten it up. And you will want to torque that. Check your manual for torque specs, or ask me in my comments below, as those specs are going to be different for different models. So we've got our secondary clutch here. Again, the way that you can put it on with this secondary clutch off is I like to slide the belt all the way in, and then I like to turn my clutch and start it on the actual shaft that's hooked up to the transmission. And then I like to straighten this clutch out and then just kind of wiggle it on there. And you want to make sure that it's all the way on. See there, it felt like it was already on because it's actually catching on groove back there. You want to make sure if you look down from the top that these clutches are lined up, or this belt's lined up with the center there. When you got it on all the way, take your bolt. Don't forget your spacers and your washers on there. Run in there. Again, use Loctite on these. You do not want these coming off. Tighten that back up. Your clutch is on and your belt's on and you're ready to go. Make sure there's a seal that runs all the way around there. In a groove there, make sure that that's on and in good shape. Pull your footwell out again, slide this on, kind of wiggle it into place there, and make sure that it sits in that groove there. There shouldn't be a lot of movement because that clutch will actually sit into that groove, and that washer will that seal will help hold that, secure that. So then run all these screws back in there. Again, there's 9 of them, 3/8 socket, and then your 4 bolts holding your footwell on. Now that is replacing the belt and removing the clutches on a Polaris ATV. Thanks for watching. Leave comments below if you have questions. Let me know those. If you're needing parts for this machine or anything else, shoot me a message, and make sure you like and share these videos. Thanks a lot.